Okay, it's a very difficult thing to be talking after Toby. And
we have higher expectations
he's built up such incredible expectations. Now I have to somehow figure this out. Right. So this afternoon we're talking about all the little things. Sorry. I'll apologize beforehand for the title of the presentation, but essentially what I'm trying to do here is give small tips to basically help in terms of the GM mindset. So tips and tricks for GMing. First off, just a run through of the basic topics we'll be looking at. Basic topics we have right now is the spirit of collaboration, GM player trust, the social contract, the concept of player agency, consequences and how to use them, XP management and the use of XP as rewards, and tips for scaling and running your own custom campaigns. So we'll be talking about all of those, and these are all the little things that I've been thinking of. Right. Some of these might seem very, very basic, but I think since the objective of the talk was to essentially run over all the groundwork. So let's start off in terms of the psychology behind it. So I guess this should have been something that we've talked about earlier on, but role-playing essentially is a group activity where everyone is a participant. So again, sometimes it's easy to fall and think that, oh, RPG is about GM and player. No, everybody is actually part of the same activity. Everyone is a participant, and therefore everybody is jointly responsible for the success of that activity. So whether or not you're a player or a GM, the point is everyone is on the same boat, and everyone shares the same burden. Just because you're a player doesn't mean you don't have any of the responsibility to make the game fun for yourself and for everyone else. So again, the goal for the entire activity is fun, and by participation, I'm talking about active engagement. One of the things that we normally fall victim to essentially when we run games is basically, I sit there until the GM looks at me and asks me, what do you do? And while that is technically part of the structure of your standard game, GM prompts, player response, GM prompts, player response, there's a point where the player is actually, the one trick is that players are naturally empowered to take a step forward and to actively add on to the activity. So it's more than just, I wait for the GM to prompt me. It's like, okay, so I'm in this scene, I'm in this party, I need information from this guy. The GM introduces the party and like, okay, is the guy there? Because if he is, I want to look for him and then talk to him, maybe corral him to a private corner and then start discussing this topic. That way, you push your narrative forward, you push it in a way that helps the rest of the party move the narrative and get to your goal, whatever that goal is for that scene. So other forms of active engagement include listening, even when it's not your turn. One of the little tragedies of being the GM is you are essentially your own audience, because half the time your players aren't listening to what the other players are doing, and therefore don't have a complete understanding of what the actual plot is. Because they don't understand that, you know, hey, something's interesting happening to player A, but you guys don't catch that because I'm busy on my phone, I'm doing something else, or if, let's say, the two characters might be in the same scene together in the same conversation, but one has tuned out, he doesn't catch the clue that's meant for him, even if I'm talking to this other player. So again, active listening is something that's very important, even when it's not your turn. We've already run through contributing. In GMs, that's building the scene. And I think Toby's just given us a very extensive lecture on how to build an excellent scene. And for players, it's taking actions that make things interesting and fun, not only for yourself, but also for your fellow players. When you are a player, it's important for you to consider that you are part of this activity because one of the things to remember is you're not just self-serving. Again, if I'm a player, my train of thought has to be, this is who my character is, this is what he wants to happen, but at the same time, you're also thinking, as a player, if I do this, am I screwing over another player? Am I doing something to torpedo the game? Because sure, your chaotic, whatever, barbarian might just eat someone's face in the middle of a party of nobles, but it's perfectly in character, but does it serve a purpose for the total game? So this is the kind of mindset that I'm trying to introduce. It's not really common be called out, but it's one that's something that you should consider. I know that most of you are planning to be GMs, but as a player, it's also good to take that into consideration whenever you make your actions. Because sometimes it may seem perfectly fine on paper if you run with logic, but if you look at it from the gameplay perspective from another player, you're pissing in his Cheerios. So try to be careful about what you do, your cereal or whatever. So trust. This is something that Toby actually touched on as well. Players have to be comfortable with the GM to trust him to do his job. And by trust, we're talking about fair and or challenging encounters. Sometimes this isn't necessarily true. GMs can be able to put up unfair encounters. That's certainly well within your scope. Cheating, hand waving in GMPL. This is another thing that I think needs to be called out on. As a GM, you do actually have the authority to cheat. To put it simply, if something doesn't go the way that it's supposed to, and it doesn't serve the purpose of what narrative you're trying to pull, you can fit. But again, and it's something that I'll get to once I talk to social contract, that depends on the tolerance of your players. Because I played with different sorts. There are players which give, you know what, if it's not in the book, it doesn't exist. We play by the book, or we don't play at all. And if that's the way that the group agrees to play, then that's the way you should be playing. But there are other players who are like, you know, these are the rules, we'll work with them, but I really don't want to die of tetanus. I really don't. And that's okay. You're like, okay, you don't die of tetanus. You fall off your horse, you get back up. That's fine. You don't break your neck. You don't end up paralyzed for the rest of the game because you failed a horse riding over.
First level character, I fall and I
Exactly. So again, it's something we'll get back to once we get to the next topic. By default, most players are willing to trust a GM that they've never played under. Unless they've been traumatized before by a bad experience. This is something that, again, I have to call out. New GMs usually run into that problem firsthand. I start a game, I call players, I get a mix, either people that haven't played before or people which have played. And for those which have played before, like, why are you just so paranoid? I introduce a scene and suddenly they're poking everything with a stick just to make sure that there isn't a bomb or a mine or something hidden in it. And new GMs get thrown off. The reason for this is basically that there are some players which have been simply traumatized with their experiences with other GMs. Because there are GMs who have run games in a manner that is essentially, I'm going to torture my players with everything they do. And you know, like it or not, it starts with that conflict again between the GM versus player. And I come from the school of thought that says that doesn't have to exist. GMs and players, again, are all participants of the same activity, rather than I'm running a game because I want to get my kicks by hurting other people. Meanwhile, you have players who are like, okay, I get my kicks by outsmarting this guy and frustrating him every week. So that's a bad relationship as far as RPGs go.
Even in other relationships.
Even in other relationships. So think about it in that context. In that context, that's really what you want to happen. You want there to be all the... I'm sounding like a relationship counselor here, but communication is key. You want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. You know, don't go to places where other players are uncomfortable. So keep in mind, as a GM, you're responsible to keep the trust of your players. So again, maintain open communications at all times. And which leads us to the next one, which is the social contract. Now, again, the social contract, officially, the contract is a legally binding agreement between two or more parties, but since we're just gaming, it doesn't actually have to be a formal document. Some groups are actually comfortable having it as a charter. I've seen some groups actually have a charter signed by all their members that this is how we plan to play. And in the act of signing it, it's essentially literally binding. So if we agree that this is going to be a lethal game, Game of Thrones, so if your character gets thrown out of a window because he witnesses incest, that's your problem. And no one has any right to complain, because that's what we agreed to. But again, that means the GM has to limit his tonal shifts. He can't just shift from lighthearted, fluffy stuff, and then suddenly murder everyone in one go. Just because he's had a bad day. So key points for this, campaign expectations. Again, it's important to set expectations with regards to tone. We're looking at humor, we're looking at super serious. I tend to run a lot of heroic games. I know it doesn't sound heroic, but the World of Darkness can be heroic in a sense, mainly because I run mage rather than vampire. So I run Legend of the Five Rings. I run a lot of superhero games. So the tone for these games can have to be set and agreed to by all players. As an anecdote, I was running a superhero game once where there was a misfire of a missile weapon that the bad guys were trying to carry out. So imagine Hydra trying to hijack a rocket launcher. It misfires, rocket shoots, tears out a chunk of concrete from a building, and that giant hunk of concrete starts tumbling towards the street. One of the players who was playing a speedster does not have the super strength necessary to stop it, but decides instead to push his super speed so that he can use his velocity to shove it out of the way, taking horrendous amounts of damage in the process, but managing to save the people underneath. To which one of the other players suddenly asks, "What are you doing? They're only civilians." And we all stop and look at him. What? Last I checked, we were playing a superhero game. But he was our speedster. He has more actions. And like, okay, we need to talk. So these are the things that we need to, everyone has to be on the same page, otherwise we're screwed. So again, lethality. So again, tetanus or no tetanus. And house rules, if any. This is something that, again, it's one of those common sense things, but GMs should really lay it out. Guys, we're playing D&D, but I really don't like this rule, so we'll change it. Rather than, oh, I changed that rule, by the way, after they've already made a decision that leads them to die. So, and other details such as experience distribution. My take on experience distribution is I usually distribute experience points at the end of a story arc, rather than at the end of every session. Sometimes in certain games like D&D, I just take out all monster experience altogether. You don't gain experience by killing monsters, you gain experience by completing whatever the quest is, stuff like that. Experience is really important, and we'll get to that later on. And attendance. Here's the thing. When I usually run a weekly Saturday game, but not all the players can usually make it. So sometimes we have agreements as to what happens. Sometimes it's we just conveniently forget that character was part of the team. He's just there. Or, okay lang yan, i-remote control mo na lang ako. So, NPC na siya, malabas natin. And just fill him on later. But, again, this has to be agreed upon because anytime you start fiddling with someone else's character, you're touching something that belongs to someone else. So it's important to respect that. You don't want the guy to come in the next session and say, "Oh yeah, you died." Because we threw you into a pit to find out if it was bottomless. It kind of was.
Almost.
So, diba?
You didn't hear a splat, no, so it's not.
we heard a splat in a bounce. Right, so next up, again, player agency. Player agency, what we're talking about here is the level of control that a character has, or a player has in the game. I'll slow down a bit here. It's important for me when you run a game to make sure that the players understand that they have agency, meaning that they can affect the world. Again, this goes back to the idea that I like running heroic games, because when you run a game where they do something that has to reflect somehow in the world, they need to leave their mark. One of the games that really did this very well was Exalted, wherein the developer of the game basically said, the entire setting is a sandbox, you throw your players in it, and then whatever happens is whatever they do. And that's the kind of thinking that I like to come from. So when your player characters do something, make sure that it leaves an impression. Don't just conveniently forget about it. Like, oh, this guy killed this lich somewhere. And then the next day, the bartender doesn't know who they are. Nobody celebrates their arrival or fears their coming. Sometimes you free a village and they hate you because all of a sudden they have no feudal lord. And no one really wants them. Or no one will protect them from the bandits because there's no feudal lord. So thank you for breaking it, hero. It's not karma because good or bad, consequences don't always follow. It's a disappointing fact of real life. You may think you're doing something good, but it doesn't mean you're gonna get rewarded for it. Likewise, you might be a total dick and still come out on top. Consequences ought to be meaningful and personal. You save a young orphan from a burning orphanage. Later on, said orphan is now an adventurer that sees you as a hero. Later on, same orphan shows up to save your life when you need it the most. Or you can spin that around and basically you're turning into Syndrome from Incredibles. He idolized you, you thought he was a pest, now he's your nemesis. Because, oh hey, he discovered this artifact while hunting in his backyard or something. But the important thing is it has to be personal. When it comes to consequences, always come back to the Incredibles, always come back to Syndrome. Syndrome is Mr. Incredible's problem. He always has been Mr. Incredible's problem, and no matter how many people the guy kills, it's all on Mr. Incredible. And that's something that your players have to understand, or have to feel when it comes to their turn in the game. When they're responsible for something, then make sure that they remember it. Consequences can be short-term or long-term. You don't always have to dangle everything. Not everyone they talk to will turn into Syndrome. It's entirely possible to go overboard with the technique. So again, sometimes that dog you kicked out of the way is just really a dog. No, because I've had tendency. One of my players basically described my playing style as that dog you kicked in the first session, we will come back for you in session 10 with levels.
He's become a dire wolf.
And companions. Not all of them have to be like that, but anyway. And again, consequences are great because they're springboards for your next plot hole. So several of the guys here basically asked early on that if we were going to be covering a topic with regards to coming up with our own stories. If we're not running from an adventure, what do we do? Now, what I like to do is I take from my players. So whenever I run a game, even if it's a one-shot, I want to understand who the characters are, what they're like, and how to build on that so that I can come up with the next plot hole. He has a sickly sister that he sends money to. Great. Then I can use that later on. Sister sends a letter. I'm being threatened by this person. He's saying that that they own the land that we own, and I don't have any documents to protect myself. That's an entire session right there. It can go legal, it can go combat, it can go something, and then once you piss off that lawyer or kill that guy has family. So then you start connecting the dots, and then you can start moving. One of the authors that we were talking about a while ago, Brandon Sanderson, was known for something called the Sanderson Avalanche, which is basically he starts slow, but as the consequences start building up, the impact gets bigger and bigger and starts affecting larger and larger parts of the plot. Sometimes it can be something as simple as a letter from your sister, and it just balloons. It gets bigger and bigger until you're strong enough to finally put an end to all of it, or something drastically changes the situation we're in. XP management. Experience points, let's face it, are the ultimate form of reward in the game. Use them to push players towards their desired behavior both in-game and out-of-game. So, in-game and out-of-game behavior, like Toby mentioned a while ago, was the whole, I'll deduct experience points from you if you start talking out of character on my table. It can be used as a punishment. Deduct. You don't always have to be this harsh, but sometimes you do, depending on the players. Because there are certain players that really won't listen until they start hurting. And then for alternate XP gain schemes, Uh, I already talked about getting XP for achieving objectives. You can also reward creativity. Oh, I never thought that you could actually do that with those skills that you had. You mean you bought the land away from the feudal lord with the money you got from selling doors from that dungeon that you tore down? Okay. That works. Get XP. Congratulations. He's now impoverished. Or, now he swears revenge. Not point. So next consequence there. Entertainment. The guy perform to the point that makes the entire group laugh or is memorable. Great. Role play. Blue booking. Blue booking is a technique essentially in downtime. So between sessions, what you can do is you can tell your players that, right, what I want you guys to do is basically hold an in-character journal. So start a blog. I don't know. Nowadays, blogging is easier. Back then, we used to use literal notebooks that you pass to the GM at the start of every session.
Hence the term blue book.
Hence blue booking. Now it's like, just blog the damn thing. So essentially, it's an in-character blog. Between sessions, write out a short fiction talking about your character, either reflecting in the events of the previous session or plans for what he plans to do in the next session. But it has to be submitted before the next game happens, so that the GM has time to process. What does this do? It puts the player in the character's frame of mind. It gives them an opportunity to plot out actions that they want to take between sessions that will only become known to the GM, so that later on, after the game, the GM can suddenly disclose all of this information. Oh, by the way, this is what's been going on behind the scenes in every player. So that's another thing that we used to do that might be something interesting if you guys ever do plan a longer campaign. And record-keeping game logs. If the GM is too lazy to actually keep a log of the game, then we can at least reward the player for doing so. So write up a game report. I will give you extra XP. Or if you want, you can pass that around to the players. Okay, so it's your turn this time. Do you want that XP? Because if you do, you're going to have to write up that report. Otherwise, move on to the other guy. So you can delegate some of your role to the players. Okay. Custom campaigns. Right. So in terms of custom campaigns, first off, you have to start small. It sounds simple enough, but essentially we're looking at a single location with a small set of NPCs to interact with 1 or 2 points of conflict. I'll give an anecdote of a campaign I ran for Legend of the Five Rings. It started off as a campaign where all the characters were essentially part of an extremely honorable samurai clan called the Lion Clan. The idea for them is that they're horrendously bound to the idea of honor and Bushido and all that good stuff. But they detest anything that's dishonorable. So sneaking about, poison, ninjas, they hate that. So the campaign started off in a single village where the players were sent to investigate the murder of one of their own. The samurai that was murdered was a young lady who was found trussed up and violated in a temple. And the Lion Clan had a special form of magic which allows them to speak with their dead. With their honorably dead. They could not contact her. Now, they found that the reason for that was that since the girl was violated, the person that did the violating was actually peasantry. Now, physical contact with the peasantry is dishonorable. Automatically damning her to become a ghost. Is it fair? No. Does it drive home the setting? Yes. Does it drive home the philosophy of the Lion Clan? Yes. Does it piss off the players? Yes. How the hell do we avenge this guy? This girl. So now they start trying to find out. And those are the first points of conflict. How do we avenge one of our fallen? They bring the matter at hand to the daimyo of the village, the lord of the village. And the lord of the village basically tells them, no. This has been resolved. pushes a small bundle in their hands. This has been resolved. Turns out eventually they realize that the Lord is apparently not very good with his finances and is in debt with a merchant house, which is run essentially by peasantry, which has money. The only difference between them is just the title and the fact that one is spiritually higher. So, in any case, you have a blackmailed Lord, which is now telling you, ignore this case. But I have rank, and you're a lion clan. What do? You disobey rank, therefore breaking your rules of following all orders from the people which have authority over you, in order to avenge one of your fallen. Because you do have an out. You can actually say, I don't want to take your money, but since you commanded it and you have rank, I can just wash my hands. But that doesn't necessarily sit well with the players. So now the players have to fight themselves and figure out, okay, what do we do next? And that's my idea of starting small. Later on, after they manage to resolve the issue of the girl, you can build outwards. The consequences and characters from their previous experience are now used to make them bigger. They've solved the murder of this girl. They're apparently capable young samurai. Let's send them on a bigger job. And by bigger job, we're looking at talking to other clans. So we scale up. Then we can start introducing local factions in politics. The merchant house that they pissed off is a network. And now they pissed off the matriarch of that network. So now they're trying to find a group of people which have no concept of honor and will do anything to stop them. So now they have assassins, they have other things, while juggling their responsibilities too, more than just their local lords. Then you can start stacking conflicts. So now they're juggling two things. Finally, you can scale up again, where they can start using their previous successes and failures as launchpads for other adventures. Introduce regional factions, in which case, in the game, the characters actually grew large enough that each one was sent to a different clan to manage the politics and the relationship of the Lion Clan with each of them. So all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're not just one happy team. We're actively trying to stop war from each of these various other clans from happening on the line, while we're being undercut by this stupid merchant house that we have not yet been able to stamp out, because they actually failed. But that doesn't mean that the story ended. It just means that the situation got more difficult. And finally, this is where I like to apply mutually exclusive conflicts. This is the one that I was talking to you guys about a while ago, where you present a situation where it's either your girlfriend dangling off a building or a school bus full of children with a bomb. And you can't save both. So essentially, those are the situations that you have to deal with, because suddenly the world is bigger than you.
I choose pizza.
You can go ahead and choose pizza and lose both, and the game moves on. And when the game moves on, you will be known as the guy who chose pizza. And in doing so, things get tougher.
Pie fucker.
American Pie.
So, it's easy enough to get thrown off. But in terms of custom campaigns, even if you don't have a big adventure in mind yet, or like you don't have to think as big as like the Dragon Queen is trying to come back to life, and so everybody's stealing money to pay for a way back from the underworld. You can start with something really, really small. Make it local, make it personal, and make it meaningful. So that moving forward, you can use the plot points and then start gaining steam from there. Of course, this means that you also have to pay attention to what your setting is and what kind of conflict your players are into. I would not have run that kind of campaign if I didn't know that my players could take it. Because honestly, the first point where they had to struggle between following orders or following justice, that would not necessarily fly with everyone. Because there will always be that guy that chooses pizza. So remember that. Even if you choose your players as much as you can, there will always be that guy that chooses pizza. So you have to be careful about how you make sure that things keep moving.
And behind that chooses bacon.
Okay, so actually
I
that's
can
technically
see
the
that I
end
choose
of my slides. But just to spin things around a bit, I know that some of you guys are starting your own campaigns and have your own questions. So go ahead, ask your questions, and see what we can do to apply some of these things and then get you started on the right path. So what do you have in mind?
Okay. I just bought a book. It's called The End of the World. It's a zombie RPG. It's an RPG where you play as yourself. And the RPG states that a good idea would be for your players to play as themselves and for it to happen where they are.
Right.
So, for example, if we're going to do it here in the game room.
Public place.
I don't. What do you mean? I don't know. No,
It's a green
one.
joke. Sorry.
Okay, you have your players.
It's not a joke. Yeah, so that took a while.
They're playing the RPG in the room, and the zombie apocalypse will happen within the room. So how will you give them the drama? How do you slowly introduce the zombie apocalypse to them?
What zombie box here?
How would you slowly introduce the zombie?
Yeah.
I start with Toby. Start talking
Yeah,
about-
actually that would be a better question to throw at Toby since he's the one building mood. But anyway,
The DM dies.
actually, honestly, one thing that I do,
Mm.
phone calls.
Okay.
Suddenly, all your cell phones start ringing.
Ah.
At one point or another, and you have like panic calls, or there's something happening. Where are you? Umuwi ka na? Asan ka anak? Nasa MRT ka ba?
That's good.
That sort of thing.
Okay. Okay.
So we start off with that, and that immediately kicks off to, wait, what's happening?
Check the internet.
Check
and
the
then-
internet or look outside, which would be more immediate
Mhm.
rather than check the internet because that's a little less immediate. So kick it off really hard and strong with look outside, so everybody's climbs down, goes out. The moment you're facing New World Hotel, you see that there's a traffic jam. Some cars have smashed into each other, and there's people are running.
Okay.
You grab the nearby guy, like what's happening? There's zombies or whatever. Then you kick it off from there.
I go to Makati Cinema Square.
Kasi we've been talking about it.
So you come up with two things. We come up with two things: guns and porn.
No, I go for the porn.
You go for the porn.
Just like the
Well, essentially, you're the guy running around with a giant dildo hitting something. Okay.
Dental chunks.
Okay, fine. So yeah, essentially that's how I would do it in terms of kicking it off from any situation. Just start off. Remember, as Toby said, everybody here is now used to cell phones.
Mhm.
How many of us actually got around to college without a cell phone?
Without?
Man, you guys are old.
cell phone.
So
Mine broke.
Well, I had,
During
but I
college.
wasn't using it much.
right. So essentially,
I had a pager.
at this point, a lot of people are now so used to having it. In fact, there was one time when we were playing a Call of Cthulhu game, where Jacob Reynoso, one of the players we had, was like, okay, this is what we do. We split up, you go here, you go here, you go here, I'll head here. And then at around 3 o'clock, I'll text all it is, and that's the message. But if you're talking about the other games from Fantasy Flight games like Only War, or Death Watch, or other 40k games, then you need something more solid than that. So if you're going to be playing a game about the Inquisition, for example, then what is it about? Oh, you're playing the Inquisition. And what else? What else? So the players will know what kind of characters to build for it. If you're playing a game about, you're all Inquisitors, you're trying to investigate chaos incursions or the possibility that some people have become possessed inside the politics of this world that's very, very close to Terra. Then suddenly, okay, so it's a high intrigue game. I might need to make a politician. I might need to make someone that's capable of stealth. It informs them, and it helps them create characters that fit into the kind of mood and type of game you want to run. So that's why it's important. Before, when I had more free time, I used to make literally a short fiction trailer for what campaign I would run. So it could be set pieces like, this is a high adventure game, so you have people swinging from ledge to ledge, swashbuckling, whatever. Or this could be a horror game. You find, you're being chased around this house by this cruel-looking doll. various other things that basically just inform the player and tell, okay, this is the kind of mood that we're getting into, this is the kind of character that I'll make. That way you don't end up with the guy that chooses pizza.
I actually, if you want to see examples of how pitches go, I've actually written some pitches.
Yep.
I posted it on Makati B&B, the games I want to run, those are all pitches.
Yeah, there's samples of pitches.
So that's you can refer to that for samples.
Okay.
So, what else? Running games. Okay. Remember that your players are your best assets with regard when it comes to running a game. There have been times when I have come to a game completely unprepared because I have not had enough time nor sleep in certain circumstances to actually plan a game. Instead, I look at the character sheets because one way to look at the character sheet is it's a collection of their stats. The other way to look at their sheet is this is what I want to do. So a fighter which has 2 swords and has, some skill in sneaking wants to be a dual wielding ninja type guy that wants to be in a situation where he can wield 2 swords in the dark. Give that to him. Because that's what he wants. It's right there on paper. You just have to look at it correctly. So, in terms of wish fulfillment, they essentially already gave it to you. You already had it since day 1. It's just a matter of playing with that. So, use that to your advantage. Also, as much as possible, do not kill NPCs. Killing an NPC is ending all their potential to be plot hooks. Kidnap them, hurt them, take them away for an extended hiatus, make them disappear, do terrible things to them. But do not ever kill them.
Make them a Hydra.
Make them a hail.
You cut one, 2 show up.
Yeah, or something like that.
Make it
Essentially, but
worse.
the idea is that the NPCs are worth more alive than they are dead. So while it's incredibly easy to, I want to build drama, I'll slaughter their entire family in a farmhouse somewhere and put in like cultish murder things. Do that with regular farmers. Don't do that with these NPCs. NPCs are worth more than that. Or if you do really, really have to, make them come back as a ghost. Or something. Milk it for what it's worth. Because those are ones chosen by your players. Your players wanted this NPC, therefore they wanted the trouble that comes with it. So, I come from a lot of superhero games, and in terms of, I don't know if you guys are familiar with a lot of comics, but if you read Invincible, Invincible is fantastic. Please read at least the very first story arc. It is the best way to do Spider-Man. Read Invincible, because that book does not pull any punches. It will show you how to hurt NPCs so badly and it will keep the players coming back because they will want to avenge, they will want to help, they will want to do things to try and fix the situation. All that you need is for your players to care, and nothing will make a player care more than the fact that he was the one that made the NPC. I built this character has this NPC. Oh, I got it for the points. Yes, but he's now your responsibility. And in character, your character has to pursue that. Otherwise, you're not playing according to the agreement. So, again, NPCs are worth their weight in gold. As much as possible. Try not to kill them, and if you do, maybe find ways to milk them even if they're dead. Or make them look like they died only to come back as some sort of brainwashed evil lieutenant of the bad guy. I don't know. Whatever it is you do, find ways to milk your NPCs.
5 minutes left.
And with 5 minutes left, any other
more
questions? Should we turn on the aircon?
Lower
That's a
it.
good question.
But I think that's about it. I run a blog.
Right, I'll ask something that they haven't
sure.
asked, but I feel it should be asked.
Alright.
Problem players.
Problem players, how to handle that. Wow, you really just have to know that one after, right? Problem players are only a problem if you let them. Okay. Some problem players occur because of a dissonance of expectations with regards to the game. They will not keep coming back to your table if they hated you. They come back for a reason. Sometimes you and the problem player just really need to sit down somewhere like in a Starbucks or kahit sa 7-Eleven lang, mag-slurpee kayo dalawa. Pag-usapan nyo yan. Work it out between yourselves. What is it that you're looking for in this game? Why am I having trouble with you? I noticed that you keep choosing pizza. Why is that? Is there something that you're uncomfortable with? You don't like it? Do you feel that me threatening the NPCs of your character is a little too personal? Is that why you choose pizza? Or are you here basically for the combat? Because if so, then I can start skewing things rather than throwing you these tough questions about what to do. It's more like, how do you kill this thing? Because he's invincible. And suddenly it becomes, oh, it's a puzzle for me to beat up. And then he's happy and you're happy. Then no more problem there. But again, it all falls back to communication. Any others? Yes.
Toby already said that he had a copy of the notes in the slide. So is it also possible to get all the probably the presentation or the
I will upload them all.
Yes.
Don't worry. I will post links in the event log.
Thank you.
So the presentation will be there. If you have any other questions or any other things, feel free to message me on Facebook or anywhere else. My blog is philgamer.wordpress.com. It's been running since 2007 and has advice on running games, reviews of various games that you may not have heard of, but are worth looking at. There's a whole bunch of new games nowadays that are really, really nice. I regret the fact that I've been out of the loop for the past month. But now that I'm back, I'm hoping to get caught up on a lot of these games, including End of the World, which is one thing I had my eye on for a long time.
Okay.
And I usually dissect each game. Like get the game, go through each chapter, what do you see from each, how do you build a character, what's nice about it, what's not nice about it, how would I run it. That's usually what I do with the sessions. But again, yeah, just message me on Facebook. I'm perfectly happy to talk shop about anything and everything regards to RPGs. Okay, thank you very much.
Alright, thank you, Jay. And this concludes the first session of the GM seminars. But before I wrap this up, I just wanna mention that Jay here actually has recently had a rather expensive personal has family medical problems. He almost lost his wife and kid. So and now they have a lot of medical bills. So if you can help him out, we have some books for sale. If you can pick that up, or you can actually donate to him directly. Any amount would be appreciated. All right. With that, thank you for coming. And I just want to mention that this place actually wasn't free. Found out at the last minute this wasn't free. But then again, there was a whole miscommunication thing going on. But fortunately, your speakers actually covered the rental fee for this place, so you don't have to pay anything. All right. But going forward, however, since there is going to be most venues will have to have a fee for this. We're going to have to. There may be a participation fee for the seminars going forward. Okay. All right. I'm currently working out with Fabs on how Fabs is this guy, our cameraman over here.
And soon to be on me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Right.
The mask though, not the face. I mean,
Yeah.
the body. Hindi ako gwapo, ganun.
All right.
The moves.
Basically, the way I'm thinking is that in the future sessions would function like a Kickstarter or Patreon. That we'd have to raise a minimum of 2,000 pesos to get the seminar going. But after that, then we either get a bigger place or better equipment. So there'd be like backer levels. You can get perks like maybe T-shirts or something like that. If you give more, yeah, and then or we could have like a shout out like maybe because one of the things I want to do the next session is actually a save my game type of scenario where you come to a panel of experienced DMs with your player problems or your game problems and and then we all like chime in on how to best solve your problem for you. That's actually what I want to run next time. But hopefully we will be able to raise enough funds. It's like 2,000 if you want to hold it here again. If we get more money, then maybe we can hold it in a bigger venue with better stuff.
Dating a non-gamer. How to convert your girlfriend who doesn't roll dice.
That's an interesting panel right there.
It takes work.
People don't pay for that. People don't pay for that.
Tapos kayo yung panel, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Alright,
So now it works.
See, you already have the answer.
yeah,
Teach us, master.
so that's that. That's that for today. This is GM seminars. Thank you for coming, and hopefully we will see each other next time.
After the role-playing
Please empty it.
Buddy, I will call your to